Senior Field Technologist. Dave, you are up to bat. Thanks so much for being here today. Are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
Outstanding. Well, I am giving you the virtual mic now. You have the floor, sir.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for taking your time with MegaCast and ActualTech Media for watching all these presentations. I've got about 20 minutes worth, I think, your time, so let's begin. My name is Dave Byers, Senior Field Technologist at HYCU. I've been with HYCU 2 years, lots of experience. I used to work for a hedge fund early in the 2000s. Some of you may know who Citadel Investment Group is, but I was one of their senior sysadmins. I was part of their data management team, data backup team. We also did automation. Now, as you can imagine, a finance institution like Citadel, they manage billions of dollars worth of people's money. So our goal was to make sure we had the absolute minimum amount of downtime possible, because every single minute of downtime cost them a lot of money. So we wanted to make sure that we had the most robust systems, best disaster recovery plans that we'd practice every quarter. We'd drive 28 miles away, shut down production, and bring everything back up in another data center. So we were very crisp at practicing disaster recovery just because we knew how much money it would cost the organization for any amount of downtime. So now, as you know, ransomware has been a really big problem. Now, when I was doing this for Citadel, we were just really worried about any kind of blips that might occur that might cause some kind of downtime with a application, servers, or portions of the business. Everything was centrally managed. It was also mostly on-prem. Nothing was really in the cloud. And we had pretty much one application to protect our data sets and nothing more than that. And our focus was really to prevent any kind of glitches that might cause any kind of issues. However, today, not only do we have to worry about disasters. So I live in the Houston, Texas area. Everybody here in the Houston, Texas area has to be prepared for hurricanes. So when summertime hits, we are very alert. We have to make sure that we practice our disaster recovery plans for planned or unplanned outages. However, you look at today's environment, and now we have to focus on cyber resilience. We really need to take a look at what is going on. Now, with the advent of artificial intelligence, it is really helpful for most organizations to utilize artificial intelligence. However, if you look at what cyber criminals are doing, there's something new. I don't know if you've ever even heard of it. It's called Evil GPT. And someone has actually developed this Python code to actually be able to create any kind of hacking tool that you might want. It's all written in Python, but I can actually come in and actually type out commands looking to actually do something nefarious and be able to generate this code very easily, very quickly. So to me, it's very scary. And at most organizations, we're trying to make sure that we're doing anything we can to prevent any kind of interruptions in our business due to cyber threats. So the landscape, and I know that we've had many presenters today, and we're probably all talking the same language also. So if you look at ransomware attack, the average downtime is going to be 21 days. The average cost is $4.45 million. So nothing that I'm going to say is new to you guys. The one thing I want to point out is some organizations do think that, hey, if I pay the ransom, that's all there is to it. That's not the case. There's lots of soft costs, hard costs that go into this on the recovery of your information. It requires a lot of people within the organization to actually recover that data. So it's going to be your cybersecurity team taking a look to see where that threat actually came in from. It's going to be your backup administrators trying to recover data, your application owners trying to make sure the applications are up and running, your virtual server team, your physical server teams. There's many people who have to get involved in that case to actually recover that data. So how does it feel to be under attack by a ransomware threat? The first thing people do, obviously, is you panic and you are worried. What do I do from here? Now, this is where HYCU comes in. Like the other presenters, what we're trying to do is to give you robust tools to actually do recovery. And I actually had someone who thought they were very well protected because they had a disaster recovery plan. So between the time that I worked for Citadel, I also worked for Como, I also worked for Veeam, I also worked for Data Domain, and also, who else? There was another organization, small, and I wasn't there very long. But I was a senior system admin, and all of those focused on large enterprise accounts. And we had, with this other organization I had worked for, they had a downtime, and it was a cyber threat that had come in. And they thought they were very well protected because they had disaster recovery plans. Well, DR plans are written for disasters. they don't necessarily work when it comes time to do recovery. And that is what I try to make people aware of, is that you have to have not just disaster recovery plans, but you also have to have incident response plans, because the two are totally different. They kind of work the same, but then they don't. So how can you fight ransomware? What I think about is that there's 6 main ways. There's detection prevention. So you're going to have some kind of autonomous tools that are going to look for any kind of threats and scanning your networks, scanning servers, scanning your backups, and actually looking for those things. You're going to have firewalls you're going to put in place. You might have third-party tools. You might have custom scripts that you've written. You might have artificial intelligence looking for these things, or the backup applications themselves are doing some of the work for you also on the backups. And then we also want to make sure that we do like secure simplicity. I'll talk about that, multi-layered protection, air gap and mutability, processes, and restoration. So let's go into the first one, which is the multi-layer ransomware protection layer 1. So this is where HYCU comes in. We've got proactive alerts for any kind of backup anomalies that might occur within the environment. We also have very strong role-based security within HYCU. So we want to make sure that only those people who have access to HYCU actually have access to HYCU. We also do expiration prevention. There's another story too. When I was a system engineer back in the days, I actually was working for one of the companies I'd mentioned. They'd called me up and they said, "Hey, Dave, I can't get to any of my backups from like 2 weeks ago." And he goes, "As a matter of fact, even from 3 days ago, my backups are gone." I said, "Well, what's your retention policy?" He said, "Well, it's 30 days. Well, I went on site, took a look at what they were doing, and I found out that one of the junior admins was getting used to playing with this backup application. They actually made a policy change from 30 days down to 1 day. Instead of hitting cancel, they accidentally hit OK. Well, it just wiped out all their backups. They had nothing. So the application that we were actually using for this organization, when you made a change, it didn't take effect from then on moving forward. It also destroyed any data sets that you had in the past. And I think they probably resolved that issue. However, what I want to point out is that what we do at HYCU is that we also have expiration prevention. So we want to make sure that we lock down the application itself. We lock down HYCU so there's no one who can come into it and accidentally make accidental changes like that. So when the policies do get locked down, they do get locked down. Now you can change those things, but like any good enterprise organization, they do have change control windows. So you pretty much will follow a change control process to make changes to those policies. However, we want to make sure we have some kind of accidental expiration prevention that takes place so we don't have people who accidentally make mistakes like that. The second layer is that HYCU is a software-only SaaS solution. It's a very lightweight lockdown kernel that sits in a virtual machine. It can also reside inside the cloud. The other thing we also offer up is fast and risk-free upgrades. I know that when users are trying to upgrade systems, whether it be an application, a database, a server, or a backup application, the one big concern is that, well, what happens if I do an upgrade and it destroys or it's not working properly? And so now I'm left with trying to recover back to another point in time for my backup application because a patch that was installed had broken something else. The one thing that we also do is that we eat our own dog food. So obviously we're going to use our own software. We actually do penetration testing within our own organization. We also make sure that we're checking any of the binaries before we actually roll them out to production. And also the users have an option to deploy the updates by themselves. So as we get an update, we actually push it out into the SaaS server itself and update our software. So it's risk-free and it's very fast and it doesn't require any intervention by the end user if they don't want to. The other third layer is I've talked to some organizations that said, "Oh yeah, I'm using that app and I've got snapshots, so I'm good to go. So I don't need to do anything else." Well, back in the days of disaster recovery, or if I lose a VM or I lose a physical server, or if I delete data or I need to roll back to a certain point in time, snapshots are really a great solution. Now, I'm not saying snapshots are bad. I'm saying snapshots with backups, with archives, with moving data off into the cloud. Those 3 or 4 things are actually the things that most organizations need to do, especially when we're talking about cyber threats. So we need to leverage all of these technologies to get back to that point in time before that cyber threat had hit. So snapshots, backups, archives, and then moving data off, either to an off-site local storage like we did 28 miles away, or it can be in the cloud. So your popular cloud providers, we can move that data. And then layer 4, we want to make sure that we have air gap built into our tool as well. So we can leverage any kind of hardware appliances, and we're pretty much agnostic. So we don't have to rely upon a specific hardware appliance or hardware device or certain hardware servers or even the cloud. So we're pretty much agnostic at that point. So if a hardware appliance actually has the ability to save data in object-based S3 compatible storage, then certainly we can leverage that hardware appliance itself. Or if someone wants to actually take their data and write it directly into S3 storage, we can do that as well. Now there's remote sites. Once again, I live here in Houston. I deal with a lot of oil and gas companies. One of the questions that we had come through with one of the oil and gas companies here in Houston, they said, well, we have oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't want to have an appliance out in one of those rigs because we really don't have any kind of support team on those oil rigs. What they want to do is to take that data directly from the oil rig platform and send it directly into S3 compatible storage. And so that is one nice thing about HYCU, is that I can move that data from remote locations either to an on-prem storage location, or I can move it into the cloud very easily and directly right into immutable storage. And also we want to make sure that we can have dedicated storage network credentials. What I think a lot of people that I do, and I'll show you with these assessments that I'm going to show you a little bit later, but when I ask organizations, do you have your production network and your backup network on the same network? I mean, do you have your backups and your production stuff on the same network? Most of the time I hear people say, yes, we do. One of the things I encourage people to do is to take your backups, not just the backup application, but the storage that we're writing to, and have it in a separate, segregated network away from your production network. We want to make sure that we built in more air gaps between you and the hacker as possible, because when a hacker does come through, the first thing they're going to do is go after your backups. They want to make it much more difficult for you to actually do a recovery at all costs. So they will try and damage, they'll try to encrypt, they'll try and delete, they'll extort. So we want to make sure that we take the backups, your backup server, your storage, and move it off into a segregated, separated network. And then also we want to, with HYCU, provide self-sufficient backups. So the one thing I like about HYCU is that we also have a lot of automation built into it. So when I tie myself into Active Directory or Okta, I automatically do a discovery, and I can recognize all of the servers within my environment from physical to virtual servers, and I can actually see those within HYCU. The other nice thing about HYCU is that I automatically detect if I have an application. So if it's an application like SQL, Oracle, DB2, I already know that those are databases. The other thing is if I apply tags to any of my environment, that HYCU can actually bring those in and drop them directly into the policy that you choose. So out of the box, we have gold, silver, bronze policies, and then you can also define your own policies based upon what your RTOs and RPOs for the business. With HYCU, the total installation from start until I do my first backup is about 30 minutes. So it's very quick, very lightweight. We do the automatic discovery of all of that. The other nice thing I like about HYCU too is that we don't require agents on physical servers. We don't require them on virtual servers, on-prem, in the cloud. And we also don't require any kind of agents on application servers. So we're completely agentless when we talk about HYCU. And a lot of people are very impressed that we can actually do that even on a physical server. Layer 5, I am very strict. So when I was working for the hedge fund, testing, validation. We want to make sure we're testing very rigorously. If I'm making any kind of major changes within my infrastructure, I need to test and validate after those changes. I also do scheduled testing and scheduled validation. Along with that goes documentation. And then I talked about disaster recovery. And a lot of people are familiar with, I've got disaster recovery. I do have the DR drills. I do practice my disaster recovery. The next question I ask is, well, what about incident response? Well, this is where I'd say 7 out of 10 people say, I don't know what incident response is. And if I do know what it is, they might not even have it documented, or they don't even practice incident response. So DR is great for, hey, I've deleted a file. I need to get it back from the latest snapshot, or I've lost a server. I need to restore back to the last known backup or the last back snapshot. And then with incident response, you really can't fall back onto the latest snapshot or backup because it might be already encrypted. So I have to do the due diligence to find out when that hacker had actually gained access to my systems and find out when the last known restore point is that I can actually go back to. So Incident response is going to be different. They are somewhat similar, but yes, they are different. And we need to practice really good testing validation with both DR and incident response. It needs to be on a scheduled basis. And then finally, layer 6. With HYCU, we also have built-in RTOs and RPOs. And when a backup kicks off, we want to make sure that we're also talking to the business units to find out, well, what are the requirements to do recovery? How much recovery time do I need to pull the application back? And then what policy does it fall into, my gold, silver, bronze, or is it one of my custom policies? So we want to make sure that when I am looking within my application, I can actually see what backup jobs, what policies are either meeting those RTOs that the business units have assigned to us, or which ones I am not following. And then also we're doing automated backup validation. So the automated backup validation goes beyond saying, oh yeah, my server is up and running, it's powered on, and I can see it on the network. Well, yes, that's a test to see that the server actually exists, but I'm talking about a little bit deeper than that. I'm talking about validation of the application itself. So if I have, say, a sales application that requires a database that is up and running, that is on a specific VM, part of that validation is to make sure the database is up and running and alive, and then the application can actually talk to that database and it's up and living. You also want to get people engaged to actually test that out. So your backup teams might not be familiar with the applications, but it's the application owner that needs to also validate that, yes, I can actually see that database and talk to it and everything is working as normal. Multi-cloud disaster recovery. So the one nice thing I like about HYCU 2 is that I can actually take a VM or a physical server and move it directly into the cloud just by a few clicks. And it's pretty impressive on how we can actually move that into a cloud. The other thing we do too is multi-cloud disaster recovery. So I can go from cloud to cloud. I can go from cloud back on a prem into the cloud, and cloud to cloud. So I've got many different ways that I can move my data around based upon the organization's needs. So wouldn't it be great to know if you are fit to fight ransomware? One of the first things that my boss, who's our CTO of HYCU, asked me to do was to develop some way in which we can actually find out how prepared people are to recover from a ransomware event. Now, there are prevention tools and detection tools. What I think a lot of people don't focus on is the recovery aspect. When we built R-Score is an assessment. And if you would look on your screen where it says getarscore.org, if you type that in, you'll see it's a real quick 23 question assessment, and that's going to give you a FICO-like score. Now, what we'd want to do is to provide an easy way for people to actually see, how protected am I and can I actually recover if I was hit with a ransomware threat. So, like I said, it's great to have prevention detection tools. That's great, but if a hacker does access your systems, they access your backups, and they actually do have gotten into your backups and they start doing some kind of encryption, we want to make sure that you are actually able to do a restoration. R-Score can help you answer that question. So I talked to large enterprises and I said, well, can you actually do a recovery and from a ransomware event? And they said, well, I've got to talk to my cybersecurity team, my auditors, my backup team, my physical server team, my virtual team, and my cloud team. I've got to ask a lot of people to find out how prepared they are. Now, this is where documentation comes in, process control comes in, your auditing. There's a lot of questions that I ask. There's there's the free web version, which you're looking at right there, getarscore.org. But I also offer up another larger in-depth consultation, which is well over 100 questions over 5 categories. This was also validated by Boston College, Mandiant, FireEye, SADA, and Carahsoft. So I did not do this in a bubble by myself. I was actually leveraging all 4 of these. And then I also am basing a lot of this on the NIST standards and also the NIST framework. So I want to make sure that I'm going above and beyond to make sure that when we do these assessments, that we actually know where you stand when it comes to a cyber threat. So though you think you're protected, we want to make sure that we actually have a good understanding of how prepared we are. I even have an insurance company in Southern California who likes it so much, they're actually doing cybersecurity insurance policies. And by those policies, they're going to look at the score. The higher the score, they're going to lower the premium for cybersecurity insurance. And then the higher the score, well, obviously they're going to have to pay more. The higher the score, lower the premium, but the lower the score, the higher the premium. So they're actually using our score to base their premiums based upon the end user scores. So that's how much traction we're getting with this, and it's really nice. I'm going to put my my email in the chat. If you guys want to, just hook up with me. Let me know that you guys would like to have an in-depth consultation. I can certainly do that with you. It takes about 2 hours, and then it takes me another 6 to 8 hours to actually generate a document for you that shows you where the weaknesses or even where your strengths are. So I'm going to do this right now. There you go. So it's in the chat. And then lastly, this is one of the last things that I'll talk about is HYCU. So I talked a little bit about this as we went along, but this is a organization that's been around for 6 years. We primarily got started with Nutanix. We wanted to build a very robust backup tool specifically for Nutanix that kind of morphed into, well, let's protect data, which is on-prem workloads. But then we then morphed into one more thing, which is SaaS protection. This is something new just as about 2 months ago. When I talk about SaaS applications, one of our auto discovery tools we can do is we can actually discover all of your SaaS applications that run in the cloud. So if you guys are using things like Amazon DynamoDB, it could be Atlassian Confluence, it might be Atlassian Jira, Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, and others. With these applications, we now not only can discover those, but we can actually do granular restoration across the board for all of those. Now, SaaS applications, I think the last count was like 17,000 plus applications. Now, there's not one backup organization that can actually write code to protect all those 17,000. So we created an API which we can have backup vendors, the SaaS vendors attached to, and it's a low code, no code environment. And then that is where they can actually attach into our API to actually do data protection at a granular level. So Okta is one of those that I think a lot of people are using today. And we have granular restoration for Okta objects. And then when people see the restoration of that within the SaaS environment, they're blown away by it. And also, we are built for disaster recovery. That's one of our strengths. And just like any other backup vendor, backup and recovery, ransomware protection, data mobility. Like I said, we can easily take data from an on-prem physical server and easily move it into the cloud just with a couple of mouse. And then also going from cloud to cloud or cloud back home again. And then with the RTOs and RPOs that are built into it, we have security and compliance. We can actually see if we're falling in or outside of compliance at any point in time. And with that, that is the end of the presentation. I want to thank you for your time. And I know that you guys are happy this is over because you've been with us for a long time today. I do appreciate it. Once again, my email is in the chat. If you guys need to see anything about RScore or learn more about HYCU, I'd be more than willing to have a conversation with you. That's it. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dave. Great presentation. Love seeing what you're doing here. Are you ready for a couple questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sorry, I think we may be talking across each other. I put the poll question up so everybody can see it. We'd like to hear what additional information you want from HYCU after that presentation. I imagine there's a lot of interest now. We've got some good questions. We're ready to go here. So let's get to these quickly. Someone asked, I have a good disaster recovery plan, so then why do I also need an incident response plan?
That's a good question. So as I said, when I did disaster recovery a long time ago, that was even before we had ransomware threats. Disaster recovery plans are really good for minor outages, major outages. They can be used for like a deletion of a server or a VM goes offline and I need to get that back. I can have a site go offline, a remote location go offsite. And I just simply follow that disaster recovery plan to bring that data back. Now, if you think about cyber threats, well, the first thing we're going to do is try to encrypt, delete, change your file names, whatever it might be. But when I'm in a disaster recovery, typically I'm going to go to my last known good backup or last known good snapshot and do recovery. Incident response is going to be different because I might not have the availability to go after that last snapshot because it might be encrypted. Same with my backups. So I now have to fall back on a different plan, which is called incident response. So I'm going to be proactive to find out where that entry point had occurred with that cyber threat and what time it occurred, what date it occurred, what systems are affected. And then that documentation, that whole process with incident response is somewhat similar to DR, but it's different. And it has to be different dealing with cyber threats because the way in which the data might exist or may not exist, or it might be encrypted, is going to be different from DR. Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, next up, Someone wants to know, I understand that HYCU now protects SaaS workloads and wanted a few details on that.
So as I said, with HYCU, we have a marketplace. And inside the marketplace, you have availability to numerous SaaS applications that we can protect. And I mentioned a few of those, but there's quite a few that were in here. We also have some that we're committing to, like AWS Lambda, AWS CloudFormation, DocuSign. So some of these are very SaaS applications that a lot of organizations are using today. So these are coming up soon. Some of the other ones that we're planning for, which might be maybe Q1 next year, which would be like ServiceNow, Workday, GitHub, HubSpot, Atlassian, Bitbucket. Those are ones that are coming up as well. I want to let people know too, when we're talking about SaaS applications, just like Microsoft 365, I don't want organizations to think just because I have a SaaS application, my SaaS vendor protects me. No, the SaaS vendor will protect the application. It's up to the end user to protect that SaaS data yourself. And a lot of people don't realize that. Now, there might be some SaaS vendors that say, yeah, I can protect your data, but it's like an all or nothing shot. If I do recovery, I'm recovering everything. The nice thing I like about HYCU, once again, is that when we do recovery, I can recover at a very granular level for a lot of these applications. And right now, we're, I think, on a clip right now to add like 10 new SaaS applications per month. And then we also have some of our partners who are also using our API to co-develop with us to push out more of these SaaS applications. But right now, we're trying to get the most used ones that we see out in the enterprise today.
And that selective recovery also means faster recovery, of course. So, okay, I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question before we let you go and let everyone else go. So, Jeffrey wants to know, does HYCU protect Microsoft Dynamics 365 data?
I'm glad you asked that, because that is on our list. We do not do it today, but that is on our list to be protected. That is one of our, so we've got three areas. One is which is general availability, one is committed, one is in planning. That one is on the committed list. So we're looking at probably Q1, Q2 next year.
Oh, really? So very soon. All right. Glad to see that on the roadmap. All right, David, thank you so much for your presentation today. Loved what you were showing, and it is great to have you on. Thanks for educating us on HYCU.
You got it. Thanks, everybody.